So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing why I think Deebo Samuel deserves to get paid. Now, before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let's jump right into the video. So I think it's pretty obvious that Deebo Samuel deserves to get paid, and honestly deserves to get paid the big bucks in the NFL. Deebo is literally a guy that can do anything you ask of him to do on the football field. He's an elite level receiver. He's a great runner. He's basically a wide receiver first, and you could argue that if you needed a running back, because the 49ers, they've had injuries at the running back. If they legitimately just need a running back for an entire game, they can put Deebo back there, and Deebo will keep that run game afloat. He showed that he's just as dangerous in the run game this season as he is as a receiving threat. So Deebo is a magician on the football field. I think people fell in love with Deebo this year. I certainly did. Honestly, just this past season, watching Deebo play, he became one of my favorite players in the NFL to watch on a weekly basis, especially late in the season, because it just felt like he was making plays all the time. And so I think Deebo is just great at everything he does. But you have Deebo, who unfollowed the San Francisco 49ers on social media, and then he removed all of his pictures. He kind of did the same thing that Kyler Murray did, although this situation's a bit different because that's a franchise quarterback. This is Deebo, and he's just I wouldn't say he's just a wide receiver, because you're not going to find another Deebo Samuel. It's like Tyreek Hill and his speed. I think it's really hard to find another guy like Deebo Samuel, but at the same time, I think if we're arguing who deserves a contract more and deserves to get paid the bigger bucks based off the position they play, for me, I gotta go Deebo if we're doing the whole Kyler Murray Deebo social media thing. But anyways, that's not the point of this video. But then you have to look at what has happened with the wide receivers this year already. You have Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. Like, those two guys alone blew up the market. I mean, Christian Kirk just set the market on fire when he signed with Jacksonville. And then you have Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams just breaking the market, and those two just getting absolutely paid, which they deserved. There's no grudge with me. Like, they deserve to get paid. But you're going to have Deebo, who's probably going to want all of that money. Now, the 49ers side of it, they might argue, hey, you're not a full-time wide receiver. You're more of a gadget guy. That would be a terrible argument on the 49ers case, because another team would pick him up immediately, whether it's in a trade or this offseason or this next season after his rookie deal expires, and another team will pick him up and pay him, because that's garbage. I think Deebo, he's an elite level receiver, because if you look at his receiving numbers, he had 77 receptions, 1,005 yards, 18.2 yards per reception, and 6 touchdowns. So it's like Deebo's not just a guy that not only can he do everything, he's elite at what he does primarily, which is a receiver, and then he's great at running the football. So if the 49ers try to lowball him here, I think that's kind of low on the organization's part. They're like, oh, Deebo, he does everything, so why should we pay him all that money? It kind of feels like that's something that an organization would do. They would try to hold down a guy's contract because they're like, well, you don't do this full time. That would be garbage. And if I'm Deebo, I would get the heck out of Dodge as fast as I possibly could, because I think Deebo honestly deserves to get paid. He deserves to get paid a lot of money. Now, I guess there could be the argument that Deebo could be up to getting injured all the time, because he's already a very physical guy, and then you increase his workload. He was injured a year ago, and so the 49ers may be looking at that. They're like, his workload's increasing and he's very physical at what he does, and so that might scare the 49ers a little bit. But at the same time, I think that's garbage too, because it's like, you're not going to find another Deebo Samuel. It's really hard to find a talent that's just great at literally just playing football. Like Cordero Patterson, Deebo, those two guys are just great at playing football. Now, I think Deebo is miles ahead of Cordero Patterson, but they're both just great at what they do. And then you also have the fact that I think if the 49ers lose Deebo, they're gonna be in trouble, because I think you could argue that Deebo is one of the most valuable players in the entire NFL when it comes to their team and a specific side of the ball. I think offensively, you could argue Deebo is one of the most valuable guys on the 49ers offensively. And I gave you the receiving numbers are great, but he did great things in the running game as well for the 49ers, 365 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he gives you huge production on the offense, 14 touchdowns between receiving and rushing, over 1,700 total yards. So Deebo himself was just a star on that offense. So I think the 49ers, again, that's just another reason why he deserves to get paid. And for me personally, I think the 49ers would be making a massive mistake if they trade him, which there seems to be rumblings about the 49ers trading him. Now, if he comes to the Chiefs, I'm not going to complain. This video is completely irrelevant. But at the same time, I don't think the 49ers should be trading Deebo. That would, again, a mistake that the 49ers will be making, and I don't think they need to let him walk in free agency this coming season, after next season, because he is in his rookie contract. So going into next season, after the season ends, I don't think the 49ers want him to walk in free agency, because they're the team that ends up getting Deebo, if he doesn't re-sign with the 49ers, are just going to give him that contract that the 49ers should have gave him. So again, it's going to be a mistake. I don't think money should be a fair argument in this, because there's a few reasons why. Because you look at the one thing that seemed to be rumbling with the 49ers this entire offseason since the season ended was Jimmy Garoppolo, and the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo could be on his way out of San Francisco. So if you get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not going to be taking up that huge cap number. I think it was the 25 million or so that Jimmy was going to be taking up. So if the 49ers were to cut ties with Jimmy, whether it's trading him or something like that, then you have no reason not to pay Deebo, because then Trey Lance will be your quarterback. He's a young quarterback who's not being paid yet. So give that money to Deebo, and while you're developing Trey Lance, he's getting better. You have a reliable receiver in Deebo Samuel, who's also getting paid, but it's not just a guy getting paid to get paid. He's obviously deserves to get paid, but he's getting paid for the value he brings to the field and the fact that he can produce at an elite level. So I think that's another thing. It's like, if the 49ers wanted to keep Deebo, they have that right there. If they cut ties with Jimmy, they could also just give that extra money to Deebo, and then you have that situation all sorted out, in my opinion. And then obviously, if they lose him in free agency next year, as I mentioned, that's going to be a huge hit production-wise on their offense. But I think Deebo is a very important asset and a very important piece to that San Francisco 49ers offense. And if they lose him, whether it's a trade or in free agency next year, that's going to be a huge loss for the 49ers, because, as I said, Deebo is going to be very, very hard to replace. So if I'm the 49ers, I pay him, and I pay him that top tier dollar. I don't know if it's 30 million like Tyreek Hill's getting. I don't think it's that much, but he's going to want top dollar wide receiver money, and he deserves it. He's done everything on the football field you could ask of a guy, and he's done more than just what he's been asked. A 1,400-yard receiver, almost a 400-yard rusher. Deebo literally can do everything on the football field.